I'm going to demonstrate cutting a 2-inch strip using a rotary cutter, ruler, and mat. Whenever you're using a rotary cutter, you need to be aware that that blade is very sharp. So you need to always cut away from yourself, and as soon as you're finished cutting, you want to shut that blade. So get in the habit of always shutting the blade after the cut. I'm going to use a scrap piece of fabric here because this is just going to be a practice. I don't want to use any of my good fabric, so you could probably find practice pieces of fabric at a Goodwill store, or maybe look inside your scraps. So make sure that your fabric has been pressed. And I'm going to fold my fabric selvage to selvage. So here's the selvage. I'm going to make sure that these match up. Notice on the side here that there's extra fabric. Often when you fold it nice and neatly selvage to selvage, there will be extra fabric because of the way the fabric's been put on the bolt. So don't worry if this side doesn't match up. You're looking for the selvage to match up. Because my ruler is not quite long enough to cut this, I need to fold it again. And I'm going to, once again, make sure that the selvage and the fold match up. And you'll notice that I've got some crookedness on the side here. So what I need to do is get a nice straight edge on one of these sides. So the first thing I'm looking for is this nice straight edge. I like to use the lines on my mat along with the lines on my ruler. So I'm going to line up the fabric with this line on the mat. I'm going to take my ruler and I'm looking at this line here, this yellow line. I'm also going to look at the lines on my ruler. So this horizontal line coming across, I'm going to line up with that. And the reason why I like to double check these lines, I'm doing the same thing at the top, is because it sort of makes double checks myself to make sure that I'm right where I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to have a nice clean straight line. So I take my hand, I put pressure on my ruler, I open up my blade, I start a little bit before the fabric, I hold the blade against the ruler, I apply pressure, and I cut away from myself, and I shut my blade. So now I have this nice, clean, straight edge. I could come in and put my ruler here, because now I'm going to measure the 2 inches. So 1, 2, and line up this. But if I try to cut this, it's very cumbersome. I could move my ruler over. I've got 1, 2, use my mat now to measure. I've got 1, 2 inches. I'm going to line up my ruler. I could cut it like that, but I prefer to have my ruler over the top of the good piece. So in this case, the good piece is this scrap of fabric. So in order to get my ruler over the top of that, I'm going to have to flip my fabric. So I flip my fabric, and once again, I'm going to use these lines down here. I'm going to make sure that I'm set up here and here. I'm going to take my ruler. I'm going to put it over the top of my fabric. I know that from here to this line right here is 2 inches. And so I don't like to start the ruler like this, right on the edge. I'd like my ruler to come off a little. So I'm going to put it down about 1 inch. And once again, I'm going to use the lines on the mat and the lines on the ruler to work together to cut this out. So I'm making sure that each one of these lines coming across are lined up with the mat lines. I'm also making sure that my ruler is lined up with this line, that my fabric goes right up to this 2-inch line, and that the fabric is right underneath that 2-inch line. I'm going to apply pressure with my left arm. I'm going to take my rotary cutter, I'm going to open the blade, put it up against the ruler. I'm not going to start exactly on the fabric. I'm going to start a little before the fabric. That's why I want the ruler down here. And I'm going to cut. So, I now have cut a 2-inch strip. If I want to make sure that that's exactly 2 inches, then I can use my ruler, or I can use, I can use my mat, or I can use my ruler to measure that up.